Hi, I'm Jason Norris, and this is On The Go FM. And on this episode, I'm talking about one of my rules for podcasting. These are the rules I try to follow and I teach to other podcasters. If you haven't listened to Rule 1 or Rule 2, go check those out first, and then come back here for Rule 3 in podcasting. Okay, so making a podcast is more complex than some people make it sound. There are a lot of details you have to understand in order to create a show that people are, 1, able to hear, and 2, want to hear. All of those details can be overwhelming. If you've never made a podcast before, and that warning about consequences in Rule 2 might be adding to your hesitation, well, that's why there is Rule 3 in podcasting. Here we go. Start with what you know. Learn as you go. If you wait till you've learned every detail, acquired the perfect podcasting equipment, mastered every detail of the recording, editing, publishing, and promoting process, as well as having planned or written the first 10 episodes, it's going to take you years to get started. Or more likely, you'll never start your podcast. It'll remain an unfulfilled dream that you'll look back on with regret. Rule 3 strongly urges you to start now, or at least very, very soon. Start with what you know. You probably already know much more than you think. You listen to podcasts, right? You listen to several different shows in various categories, right? Okay, well, if you don't listen to any podcasts or very many, then that is where you start. Start with what you know. Well, start right now with listening to those podcasts. You need to hear what others are doing to at least to get an idea of where to start. Listen to other podcasts in the industry you want to podcast in. Of course, that's right. But don't stop there. Listen to episodes from way outside your field so you can hear how podcasts can be made. And then apply Rule 1 to your plans for your podcast. It's your podcast. That means it's your choice in format, duration, and all other aspects. Also, start listening to podcasts about podcasting. You're listening to one right now. Thank you for listening. It's a good idea to listen to more than one. Everyone who makes a podcast about podcasting has a different perspective on the best practices for making podcasts. I listened to as many as I could find. Most of them have good insights into the field of podcasting, best practices for making a podcast, and also look into the future so you can keep up with the changes, and those changes inevitably will come. Once you've started listening to more podcasts of all kinds, and especially those podcasts about podcasting, then you can move ahead and start your own. The suggestions I've heard from others, and I agree, is start your podcast as soon as possible. There's a well-known fact in the field of podcasting: you can't get better until you start. Once you publish a few episodes, you'll start to understand what's working and what's not working. But before you start, you only have this idea of what you want to do. It's either nebulous, no clarity at all about your goals for the show, or it's too detailed, too many specifics in your plan for something that you've never done before. Ira Glass calls it the gap. It's this chasm between what you want to do and your inability to make it so. The only way you can bridge that divide is by doing the work. You won't get better until after you start. Roman Mars spoke at the podcast movement in Fort Worth, and he talked about the many, many hours of junk you have to make before you start getting good. Once again, you can't get to the good without starting. As you go through the process of planning, speaking, recording, editing, publishing, and promoting, you will learn. But you cannot learn until you start. So that is Rule 3 in podcasting. Start with what you know. Learn as you go. And if you're ready to start your podcast and need some advice, some guidance, I can help you. Get in touch with me. I'm a podcast consultant, podcast editor, and I love talking about ways to make your message mobile with a podcast. You can find me at jasonnorris.com. I'm Jason Norris. Thank you for listening to another episode from On the Go FM.